You're listening to No-Name Podcast International. In this series, we talk to cybersecurity experts all over the world to discuss cyber domain of the war, make new connections for Ukrainian InfoSec community, and learn from our colleagues abroad. Our guest today doesn't need an introduction, and I know that for sure because this Friday I was over at my friend's house who's in IT, but he's not particularly in security. And then his wife, who's a teacher and an artist, said, "Oh, you're recording with Bruce Schneier on this Sunday. I got to listen to that one." So, so there you have it. Mr. Schneier, it's an honor to have you again, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Last time we talked at NoNameCon 2020. Also remotely, but that time, thankfully, because of COVID. The interview was definitely one of the most popular videos of the conference of that year. So how was your experience at the conference back then?
You know, I tell you, when we're doing those remote events, you don't really have a conference experience, right? You know, you're sitting in your room, you're attending things. Is it one conference? Is it another? You don't really know. So I don't even know how to answer that, right? I really like the fact that we're having in-person events again.
I would say it's always very transactional in a way, right?
You just and when you're there, and it's not just the sessions. It's between sessions, conversations, going out to dinner, going out for a drink. It's a very different feeling than even this. Like, you know, we're talking on Zoom.
100%. And we're still hopefully looking forward to see you in Kiev sometime. You know, maybe at the next.
I've been there a couple times. It's been a long time. I'm looking forward to coming back. So, you know,
maybe next NoNameCon. Maybe next NoNameCon after the victory.
I'm in favor of that.
So usually what we start talking about, of course, is because these international episodes we were always recording after the war started. Before you, we had 13 awesome guests who are amazing supporters and amazing professionals. And what we typically ask and start from is what surprised you the most about the Russian cyber attacks against Ukraine after the war? Because obviously everyone in security, everyone is aware of long history of the attacks, but what surprised you the most since the war started?
You know, I think I'm saying the same thing that everyone else said. It's how ineffective they were. That we in the community really thought that warfare from now on would include a strong cyber component, that it would be a part of war from now until forever. And it seemed that, you know, in the run up to the war, different, or what happened a few years ago, what even happened, you know, at the start of the war with the Starlink terminals, the other terminals, right, was different. But once the war starts, there's very little in terms of activity in the cyber domain. And I think that surprised a lot of us. We really expected it to be more of a thing. Yeah, and since then we've thought about it and we have theories, but I think it was a surprise, and it continues to be a surprise.
And some people believe that you know, oh, we're just not seeing everything, and there still may be some devastating attacks that are just not visible at the moment. To be honest, I'm skeptical. I believe that at this point, Russia would do everything that they can, and if they could, they would do attacks. But I'm interested. What do you think on this?
I think you're right. I mean, devastating by definition is visible, right? It's not going to be devastating unless you can see it. And here we are over a year in, and we haven't really seen much. I mean, there are a couple of things. I think there are a few things going on. I think Russia is still a little concerned about spillover. You know, but they are engaging in cyber operations against other countries, you know, NATO countries that are supporting the Ukraine, whether it's sort of in the oil industry or logistics. So I think we are seeing those happen. I think what we've learned is that once the shooting starts and the bombing starts, that a cyber attack isn't that interesting. It's much more effective to go in and shell a power plant or an airport or something like that. But I think we are seeing operations kind of disrupt the flow of aid into the Ukraine. And I don't think we talk about that a lot. They're not happening in the Ukraine. They're happening in Poland and Germany, right, you know, and other countries. So I think there's that. that's also true. I think there are, I don't know this, but I think there are attacks against the Ukraine that happen and are successful. But I think the Ukraine very smartly is limiting media coverage of those. Like, why, right? Why give publicity to the successes? So I think things are going on that we don't know about. And I heard that from someone who I trust. So I'll leave it at that. But
So
yeah,
you would
it's
say,
really interesting to see the lack of cyber. I mean, in the beginning, it made sense. Now, Putin is very secret about his plans. We know that cyber attacks take a long time to plan. If you don't tell your generals what you're doing, they're not able to plan. So I think that was very much a limiting factor in the beginning, that he just didn't have anything ready. But you make the important point is they've had a year now. Right? They've had a year to figure stuff out, and the fact that we still don't see anything implies there's really nothing there.
Don't you think they are more focused on collection operations currently?
So I think that's true. Although, so we learn a lot about. I mean, certainly Ukraine did some really excellent collection against the Russians. We do know that there are times when Ukraine is retreating from an area that they will destroy cell towers rather than let them fall into Russian hands. So there is information warfare happening.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think there is intelligence gathering on both sides. We're not going to hear about it. I mean, those operations tend to be very secret. If I'm listening to your command and control, I'm not going to say anything. I mean, I might not use the information I have because it's such a valuable channel. So that's the kind of thing we'll only learn in history. But certainly both sides are trying to listen. Right? Russia has all of its, internal abilities. Ukraine has its abilities, which I think it learned a lot in the 5 years before, 10 years right, before the invasion. And also Ukraine is getting help from Microsoft, from Google, from other NATO countries, right? So there is a lot of aid. I think that's also very valuable. Some really interesting reports coming out, like in the past couple of weeks. Google had one. There was one that came out of, I think, Anissa in Europe, sort of about what's going on. And it's a lot. I haven't read it all yet. But I mean, history, we're going to learn a lot in history. But when this is over, 10 years on, I think history will teach us a lot about this really being the first cyber war. Right? It was not Russia attacking Estonia in 2004. This is really the first information war, and how ineffective it is, I think, is important.
That's true. And I think in some of our very first episodes, we shared the image of Vlad will remember better who did the analysis, but it was about the intensity of attacks, on a time scale. And there were consistent attacks before the war, but like February 24, it just explodes, and it was pretty consistent for at least, I think it was like back in March. So for several months, they were very intense, even though we only heard about few of them, like Viasat and, the big ones, but then, and in the beginning, and then later they kind of faded away. I still had heard some, things happening from here and there in my home city or town, rather. It's pretty small. There was an internet provider that hacked, but, they just sent SMS messages with like Russian agenda, but everyone ignored it, and that's basically it. I'm pretty sure we'll probably learn more, like you said, about the capabilities for data collection, but that will take time.
Yeah, I think the story not being talked about are the disruptions in the supply chain outside the Ukraine, to companies and countries that are supporting the Ukraine, and that's much more subtle. Right? That's not destructive in the same way.
And but, I guess harder to attribute.
We learned from things like NotPetya that Russia is, can be pretty indiscriminate when it wants to launch an attack of where the spillover is. But I think now the calculus is a little bit different. This is a very hard This is hard to analyze. I think we just know so little, and we're just doing so much speculation.
Yeah.
It's really hard to know what's happening.
Biden administration actually recently released new national cyber strategy for the US, which includes shift to more offensive cyber actions and cyber operations. What's your opinion about this in particular, and the idea of cybersecurity strategy in general?
So this is Biden's cybersecurity strategy. This is not the first. We get one every few years, right? Every president. I think Obama was the second Bush might have been the first. Maybe Obama was the first. They're very general. They don't have a lot of specifics.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a lot of implementation details. It's unclear how much power the president has to implement the agenda without Congress passing laws, without a lot of work. So it's often very aspirational rather than tactical. You can read that in the document. So it talks things about liabilities, which I think are real important, that software manufacturers are liable for mistakes they made, for vulnerabilities they leave. But the details of that's very complicated, and that's all left out. Whether that can be done without a new law, we don't know. The U.S. has been moving towards offensive capabilities, really, I think, for the past decade. You'll hear it called defend forward, which is, I think, something, kind of Orwellian name for attack. Right? But the idea is that, if we are being attacked, then we want to take our defense to the enemy. And we know we did this against Russia. Not a lot of details are known, but you know that Russia did a lot of operations in 2016 against the United States in election manipulation. And in 2018, we know that there was something Russia had planned for election day or the week before, or something very close to the election, that US Cyber Command disrupted in Russia. I don't know, did they turn off the computers? Did they, we don't know what they did. We don't know any details. There's an example of an offensive cyber operation, an effort to disrupt an operation against us. If you think about it, it is more effective than defending, because you don't know what it is, and defending is hard, attack is easy. You can disrupt an attack in progress or before it occurs. That is very valuable. That stuff is very, very shrouded in secrecy. So we have no details, right? Is the United States assisting the Ukraine in disrupting Russian cyber capabilities inside Russia? I don't know. You don't know, we don't know.
Yeah.
That's possible. Like Russia, UK, just another country. Is Ukraine doing that? Like themselves going into Russia and disrupting?
We won't tell.
Right. And so this is rightfully a secret. And this is why I really say that history is going to be where we learn all these things.
Right. I think with cyber, it's actually the opposite of the actual warfare, where attacking is actually really hard, comes with lots of losses. Defending is easier. With cyber, it's the opposite. So that kind of naturally makes sense, I think.
Yeah, it's technically hard. It's often can be operationally. Sorry, it's technically easy. Often can be operationally hard.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a war, and that's very different. But when you think about Stuxnet, U.S. and Israel launches a cyber attack against the Iranian nuclear power plant. That was a lot of work, both writing the exploit, right, writing the attack, and then the legal authorities and all the paperwork that is inherited when the United States does something like this. And that's very difficult. So the U.S. president can't just say, launch this and suddenly happens. There's a famous story that after North Korea attacked Sony, right, so 2014, I think that's the year, North Korea attacks the United States, and President Obama brings Admiral Rogers, who is Admiral of Cyber Command, and says, what can we do in retaliation? And Rogers says, give me a year and I'll give you an attack. The president is, I don't have a year. What do you have now? The answer was nothing. Right? So attack is actually hard to get it together to do, but in the moment, tactically, attacking is easier than defending. It is easier to attack a network than defend a network. And that's, I think, true has been true since the beginning and will be true for a long time. So that's why you're seeing defense that really looks like offense, because the easiest defense is a counterattack.
Right. Vlad, you had something?
Yeah. Just going back to the strategy. I just would like to hear your opinion about the one pretty innovative tool that the administration is trying to introduce, basically introducing it. I don't know what will be the details of implementation, but the concept is really appealing, I would say. So this concept of safe haven, compliant safe haven, right? So for the companies that demonstrate enough due diligence, you will not be as liable as the companies that do not. Yeah, negligible companies will be fined like fully, and companies that follow the guidance and demonstrate that they do what they can within the boundaries of economic possibilities. Yeah, so they will be confined in this so-called safe haven and will not be punished in case of a devastating incident. What do you think about that? I do not remember anything in any legal framework until now. It looks like a pretty good idea, but I would like to hear what you have to say.
So it's not new, but the notion that liability depends a lot on circumstance, and it depends a lot on whether you made a mistake or willfully were negligent. I mean, your mental state matters a lot, and cybersecurity is hard. And the idea that your software has to be perfect or you're liable, it just doesn't make any sense. We don't know how to write secure code. We have good practices, we have good methodologies, we have lots of tricks and things we can do, good coding practices. And the idea is that if you follow those, then you're doing the right thing. And if there's something that you could have imagined, I mean, think like a Spectre or Meltdown, which like was out of left field. Suddenly, now these chips are vulnerable. Nobody could have expected that. You're not liable in the same way as if you didn't install your patches for 4 or 6 months, and you'd underspent on security, didn't have an offer. I mean, so that really feels important. And if we're going to have a liability regime where vendors are responsible for cyber attack, responsible for vulnerabilities in their code, there needs to be some gradient of whether you were willfully negligent, you didn't follow best practices, you just did the cheapest thing, or you did all the right things but got unlucky. And those are not the same. So that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the devil is very much in the details here. This is not easy, but that kind of idea is not new. You will see it in other complicated areas where there is liability, but there is this notion of, I mean, safe haven might be too strong a word, but of best practices that if you follow them, you're not as liable as if you like deliberately and willfully and vaguely ignored them. Flagrantly,
but
vaguely. That's the word.
Currently reading your book, Hacker's Mind.
Do I see it in the shelf behind you?
It's gonna. Sorry.
Do I see it in the shelf behind you?
Oh no! It's an audio. I didn't have time to
There's
ship
a
it.
book cover that looks like mine that's behind you.
I think there is one.
There are quite a few. There is Beyond Fear, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Here and
all right, there it is. Right.
Of course. Just on this note, I must admit that yours was the first book in principle that I read about cybersecurity or related stuff. Applied cryptography was that changed my perception of many things in technology. So, but back to A Hacker's Mind. So what you describe as a complicated legal framework that might work or might not is a perfect environment for actual legal hacking that many companies, not many companies, but many legal counsels and their offices will be tempted to exploit, right? So let's see how it goes.
And I think that's right. I mean, this is sort of me generalizing this computer term to a wide area for the people watching who don't know my book. And in it, what I'm doing is I'm taking the notion of hacking and extending it to social, political, economic systems. So the good example I always use is a tax code. The tax code is not computer code, but it's algorithms. It has inputs and outputs, it's math, and it has vulnerabilities. We call those vulnerabilities tax loopholes. It has exploits. We call them tax avoidance strategies. And it has black hat hackers. They are lawyers, they are accountants. And so that parallel really works. And I do think about these systems of politics or of democracy or of regulation or of finance as hackable. And they are hacked by the rich and powerful. Yes, so it was I liked writing the book. It was really my pandemic book. So it was fun to write.
It's very.
Did you have something on strategy or on the book?
Actually, right. On the book, I have like this tax example is very important right now because still tax return deadline, in US is approaching. But I wanted actually to follow up a little bit on these offensive operations, right? Like when we're saying that offensive operations are easier, right, than defending a network, and what kind of operations we're talking about. Because there's also, many limitations on what we can do in offensive. Is it like more about attributing people? Is it like disrupting the malicious networks? Or, what can be done there in theory?
Yeah, so the offense, I think of it in terms of penetrating networks and doing things. So it's in the United States, at least, the legal regime where espionage happens and attack happens are very different. They are different laws, they are justifications, the rules, everything is different between spying and destroying something. But technically, they're exactly the same thing. I mean, you enter a network, you figure out where you are, you move around, you get access, you establish persistence, get capabilities. Now the question is it copy star dot star or delete star dot star? Right? I mean, it's exactly the same technically up to that very last moment. So even though legally they are completely separate, technically they're the same. So I think that when I think about these operations, my guess is that they're all dual use. They all can do both, depending if your goal is to copy stuff or disrupt stuff. Now, in the United States, if you're doing the copying, you're the NSA. If you're doing disrupting, you're US Cyber Command. Those are different organizations, both in the US military. Remember, the same director runs both of them. They're both at Fort Meade because technically they're so similar. I think that's interesting. So I do think that there are a lot of capabilities, that everything the US at least has done in the past several decades in the computer world for espionage also works for attack.
So for the, I think by now already quite a few years you're focusing on policymaking, right? So you know this stuff. So I was just wondering, this cybersecurity strategy, right? The last thing I wanted to cover is, so you mentioned that it's very high level, but what would you want? How would you like to see it? Like, do you have some recommendations for US? How would you change the process? Would you add something? And after that, what would you recommend to Ukraine on their national cybersecurity strategies, if you have something?
Right. So the United States is hard because I just don't know the politics. And a lot of it is the politics. Mm-hmm. What can President Biden do on his own without Congress? Because Congress is not going to help with anything, even if it's a good idea. And I just don't know the answer to that. Okay. But certainly I like seeing liability. I like seeing a focus on the Federal Trade Commission and unfair and deceptive trade practices, looking at US corporate practices. I like when he talked about critical infrastructure. In the United States, the critical national infrastructure is in private hands. Power plants, water treatment plants, the airlines, all the things that are critical, the internet, the telecommunications are owned by private companies. And they're going to need help securing against a Russia, a China, these large nation states. So I think those are really important realizations. Again, the devil is in the details. I'm not a detail person. I am a big picture person also. So I don't know, but I really, this is hard. Defense is hard. Defense is expensive. And I'm not convinced we as a country are willing to pay what it would cost to defend. And if we're not willing, we're not going to have a good defense. And you think of SolarWinds as, a really impressive Russian operation against the United States. So here is Russia, I think it's the GRU, hacking into SolarWinds, which is a network infrastructure company that makes just like network management monitoring software that tens of thousands of companies worldwide use, including 400 of the Fortune 500, most US government agencies, a lot of really big players use it. That company just has bad security, so the Russians hack their update process, put a backdoor in an update. The update gets distributed out to, and as far as we know, between 14 and 18,000 companies are now vulnerable. Now, of course, Russia can't go after 18,000 companies. There's too many. So then they spend the time picking and choosing who they get into, establish persistence. They're there. The attack was discovered. SolarWinds patched the update, but the damage was done. In order to get Russia out, you have to burn down your network and build it from scratch. And no one's going to do that. That's too expensive. So I think Russia is still in a lot of networks in the United States from that operation. Incredibly powerful and successful. How do we stop that? Any cybersecurity strategy needs to take that into account. And that's hard. There are hundreds of those little companies, when you think about supply chain, and that make these targets vulnerable. I don't know how to secure that without a massive government effort that we're not willing to undertake. That's the United States. You also asked about Ukraine. And my guess is, this is not the point for a strategy. This is the point for tactics. In the middle of a war, after the war is over, then worry about a cybersecurity strategy. And right now is, how do we survive this week, next week, this month, next month? So I think, there's not going to be a lot of strategic thinking. It's all tactical. And that's okay. I don't think that's bad at all. It's a very tactical situation. Anybody who's good, I want them to be doing tactics, attack, and defense for today, not worrying about 2 years from now. Unfortunately.
Makes perfect sense. And Vlad probably wants to show that to many people who are always, there's, we joke when, even if there's just one Ukrainian, that's too many to agree. So there is a lot of quarrels about.
Okay.
But today we are gathered for another reason. So let's not argue.
Yeah. No, I think that perfectly describes it. Where just entire society try to do whatever they can. Some things are right, some things are maybe wasteful, but at the end of the day, everyone's just trying to do whatever they can. Yeah. Thanks for your opinion. And so now we can go back to the book. So I was wondering, it's like you mentioned just before, right? It's a perfect example of big picture book, right? Because you start from hacking systems and then, in traditional sense, and then you move to hacking political systems, legal systems, and cognitive systems. You also talk about AI. So were you inspired to this book, started from event of 2016, or did you have the idea to write the book even before that?
Think about that. I really started working on it in 2020. Very much a pandemic book. And for me, writing is how I think. So I don't get the idea and then I write. I start writing and that forms the idea. Right, so 2020, we're all shut in. It's, not a lot of places to go, not a lot of things to do. I have my internet, I have my computer. So I'm trying to think about these things. And I had, the early drafts are very different. Different points, different focus, as I'm trying to figure out what I want to say, what I have to say. Right? What can the computer security field teach the rest of the world? Right? What do we have that we've learned in attack and defense and hacking and patching and resistance and red teaming? All those things we do. Right? How does that apply to other systems that aren't computer systems? And that it really is where the book came from. So writing in 2020, finishing it in, God, the years are so hard, right? Finishing in early 2022, then it's published in
February
this year, right?
7, I
Published in
believe.
spring of
Yeah.
right, February of 2023. So maybe I finished it more the summer or early fall 2022. And that's about my process. That's about how long it takes. But I don't mean I'm really the early days. I'm just jumping in and writing stuff and wondering if it fits and where it fits and how it fits, and often it doesn't.
In the book, do you focus on USA in particular, or what you describe is also transferable to other countries, Europe especially?
Yeah, so this is normal in my writing. I mean, I'm writing globally. I'm writing about concepts that are global, but most of the examples I know are the United States. So I'm thinking, in my book, I use a lot of examples from history, from religion, from different corporate activities. A lot is Western, a lot is American, but I could think of right now an example I use from Japan, from Australia. I mean, so there are other examples, and I like to use a lot of examples. So the examples tend to be short, paragraph long. It is mostly United States because that's what I know. That's where I've heard the stories. Those are the details. And when I stumble on a story that is not American, I jump on it because I like to have a more global perspective. But it is harder.
Vlad, did you have something?
Yeah, just something came to mind. You have used the term pandemic book a couple of times now. Is it a thing? Is it a thing between authors? Because you know that Newton's Principia, yeah, it's pretty much a pandemic book too.
It's very
It was
funny.
closed
You're right,
for
it is.
a couple of months or something during the plague in London. Came
That's
out
big.
with the basis of calculus or something.
That is funny. I've heard the term before. Pandemic book, pandemic project, where where someone would pick up a new hobby or something, or because right, we just had so much more free time, and we were otherwise pretty bored and isolated. So I mean, in the United States, a lot of people picked up baking bread.
Oh,
Like, we actually had a run on yeast in the United States. Everyone was making bread.
And flour. Yeah.
Right. And so we can't get the raw materials. But no, I know people who talk about their pandemic book, the book they wrote during the pandemic. But it's not just me. I don't think it's a term of art. It really
at least
isn't.
something good came out of it. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Alex, do you want to go with your question? Because after that, I would move to AI, what everyone's waiting for.
Sounds threatening.
Speaking about AI, by the way, right? I think Vlad generated several questions with ChatGPT for you, and
it was quite funny because from the first try it generated absolute bullshit, but it learns. So I said, okay, now try something ironic. Then okay, that's not funny. So it keeps apologizing after every feedback. And it gradually becomes more and more subtle, and sometimes it's even fun. So I just picked 5, but
did you ask it with my name or general? Because ChatGPT knows who I am. You could have it ask for my bio, and it produces something that's pretty accurate. So it knows, its knowledge base includes. I'm public enough that it knows me.
Because over the course of your career, you gave it plenty of material to work with.
Right.
Yes.
A lot of
and
things
it learned from it.
Yeah.
It also learns from online sets of like mass media and culture. So it even is aware of your like parallel courses in culture with another iconic figure, Chuck Norris. So one question was even related to it. So if Chuck Norris and Bruce Schneier met, who would win? Whatever. But so it knows a lot.
and it's interesting. It does know. I mean, had the internet as training, but it was cut off, so it doesn't know current events. Now, this is not inherent in the technology. This is the way ChatGPT was trained. You think about the way the Google search engine is trained. It is constantly updated by the minute with new websites, new information, things that appear on the internet. I'm assuming other large language models will be trained in that way. This one is static. So you can't ask it what happened yesterday. It has no idea.
So it doesn't know your recent book, but it knows everything else. And
that's interesting. I don't know what the cutoff date is, but that's possible.
I think they stopped at 2020. Yeah, so the corpus was like cut off. But do you think it's? Do you know? Maybe did OpenAI do it on purpose?
Of course they did on purpose. Right? I mean, of course, it's on purpose. It's here's our knowledge base. Now we're going to train it. GPT-4, I don't know if it's cut off or if it is attached to the web. Now we're seeing GPT integrations with various knowledge bases. Kayak, which is a kind of an online travel agent in the United States. Open Table, online dinner reservations service. They're have announced GPT integration. And they're, of course, going to have the current state of affairs. What are plane tickets cost right now? Which restaurants have space right now? They're not going to be static. GPT-4, I don't know. Microsoft has a GPT integration into Office. It's called, not called Sidekick. Copilot, called Copilot.
Copilot.
There, right.
Sidekick would be cooler.
Might be cooler. Copilot, and there it's using your information. So your documents and spreadsheets and PowerPoint and emails and calendar and scary and chats and Teams meetings. So it's using all of that. I assume that is continuously updated.
Okay, so I just asked it. I asked GPT-4 what's the latest book, and it says it's click here to kill everybody. So
all right, so it is. Yeah, I don't have access to 4 yet. I have my account on 3, but I don't have an account on 4.
Oh, it's available to.
When I tried to register, it was we're full, we're sold out. So we'll let you know when we have space. So
is there a particular question you wanna ask, Vlad, from ChatGPT by ChatGPT?
There isn't. I mean, I want to keep abreast of capabilities. I mean, I want to see how it works. I mean, I really feel like I need to know how they work and be able to work with them.
Sure. It's the future. I don't know, for better or worse, but it is.
It's be interesting. I mean, I'm okay with assistive technology that helps people be more articulate. I don't want it to be a chatbot that replaces humans in political discourse and suddenly it's a propaganda machine. I think that'll be bad.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But if someone uses it to write a more effective letter to their congressperson, I think that's great. Right?
You just said that, but I recently was in Washington, D.C., and I just tried to write a letter to my representative to see if they could allow me the visit to the White House. I did use ChatGPT for that. No one wants to spend time on writing long, sophisticated sentences for formal writing.
And that's valuable because you use it, you read it, you edit it, it's yours, right? I mean, and then you send it under your name. I'm okay with that. Right?
I use it for everything that requires. Sorry, I use it for everything that requires overcoming the writer's block. Because the blank page block for me
language skills. You might not have the same language skill as someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair.
Just generate something and then edit it out. But
Right.
funny thing, I just saw a movie, her, yeah. So I was late on it, like quite late. So I just saw it after I was introduced to ChatGPT. So
Okay.
the funny thing is that the job like this doesn't exist in the future. No one writes love letters. We have an app for that.
That's right. But it's interesting, that's not new. So I mean, it's probably the same in the Ukraine as the United States. If I want to send a birthday greeting to a friend, I go to a store and I pick out a pre-written message. I look at the birthday cards and I pick a pre-written message. I sign my name to it and I send it. And how is that different? It's the same thing, right? A third party is writing my feelings, and I'm just picking one that matches, and then I send it on. If I go to GPT and said, write me a birthday greeting to my friend, and here's what he's like, put it in the form of a limerick or a song. That's about the same thing.
Gentlemen, we've jumped into the topic without actually discussing it. So
I know, it's okay.
Do we need to share anything like serious about ChatGPT? Do we have any serious questions before I start reading the stuff that I've picked from from machine-generated ones?
All right, let's get the questions. I'm ready for machine. This is a machine-generated interview questions from ChatGPT starting now.
If no objections, I will
just
read them. Again, these are like selected from 25 short.
Okay, so the machine generated them, and so the machine generated them, and you curated them.
I took stake in it, so I curated it. I picked up 5 because we won't have time for everything.
But I want to hear the dumb question too. I want to hear at some point tell me the dumbest question you come up with.
No problem. I didn't delete it. So
okay.
I already regretted I told you so. Now maybe if I just read something dumb, everyone will know that I picked it. Okay, so the first one: if there were a Bruce Schneier action figure, what accessories would it come with to help fight cybercrime, and what would its catchphrase be? Yeah,
catchphrase.
Wow.
What would be its
so there
catchphrase?
Was a Bruce Schneier action figure at some point. There actually was one. It was like a special made, but someone had a company that did custom action figures, and they made a Bruce Schneier action figure. I don't even have one. That's how rare it is. But it did exist. And I'm trying to remember.
So if there were.
Right. What accessories would it have? It would have to have a laptop, right? I don't know. You want to give it an Enigma machine or a cipher wheel? But you want a cool accessory. Right? And I'm thinking about this. Right? And what would his catchphrase be? Well, so I have a couple of catchphrases. Security is a process, not a product, was a catchphrase of mine from the 1990s. Right? Security theater was a phrase I invented in 2001. Maybe one of those. I don't know if I have a phrase.
We still see it every time we fly somewhere.
Of course you do, right? Like that's security theater. That'd be a good phrase. Right? It's not a bad question. It's a weird one, but good. I'm okay with this. This is gonna be fun. What else did it come up with?
Okay, next. If you could go back in time and give one piece of cybersecurity advice to a historical figure, who would it be, and what would you tell them?
Wow. Did you ask for like weird questions or like regular questions? What kind of prompt was this?
It was what questions related to Bruce Schneier and his work should I ask at an interview with Bruce Schneier?
Wow, these are pretty good.
There was not a lot of direction there, right?
These are surprisingly entertaining.
But then I refine it. I refine it with my feedback, for a couple of iterations, for 5 iterations.
I've been asked a whole lot of boring questions. I've never been asked these questions before. All right, so historical figure.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit embarrassed that ChatGPT is already doing better than us.
Better than us.
It'll get really bad when it'll be able to simulate your voice and your face, and
we're getting there.
You and you can you're not even around.
We're already there.
It's possible.
Trained a model on the Steve Jobs' voice, and then attach ChatGPT to it, and you can basically call a bot on Facebook Messenger and directly have a conversation with Steve Jobs.
Interesting. All right, so that was all me stalling, actually, because I really am having trouble thinking of a good answer here. I'm trying to think of a historical event, right, that I would want to affect, where I could affect, right, with either offensive or defensive cryptography, right? So, right, you can go back in time and tell someone on the Enigma.
I was just gonna say, just don't tell them to use Enigma properly.
Well, it depends. Do you want to help the Germans? Do you want to help the Allies? So sort of different thing. Do you want to go back to Mary Queen of Scots and say, here's a like a better cipher, or here's a worse cipher? I can't think of one. That's a fun question. I don't have a good answer.
It is one that you would like to think, yeah.
Right, that's the kind of good question you did someone the night before.
Let's proceed then.
All right,
Number 3. You've written about the psychology of security. If you could hypnotize everyone in the world for a moment to make them follow one cybersecurity tip, what would it be?
Wow, so that's either going to be install all your patches, have a good backup, use a password manager, something like that. I mean, you really think about the really basic stuff that people don't.
That would have the most impact, yeah.
I mean, I tell you, I just had a computer disaster. I mean, this week has been a horrible series of computer disasters. You are lucky I am here now with a working computer and webcam and internet. This is, I could have easily canceled. And the thing that saved me is I have good backups. When my computer died the big death, I lost 5 hours of work, 5 hours of email, and nothing else. And that's extraordinary. And most people don't do that. And that's like the single most important thing you can do to protect yourself, your data. Back it up repeatedly, often.
That's very good advice. That's very good point. Yeah, very good advice.
And then installing all your patches. And lots of people don't even install their patches, and they're vulnerable to things that are fixed. And that's just crazy. So getting people to install their patches, so maybe one of those two things, maybe both of them. If I've got them hypnotized, I can do two things, right? Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to say that.
He's already hacking the
number
system.
Number four. I will tell you later why I picked it, but
all right.
That doesn't look very promising from first glance, but still. If you were to create a security-themed amusement park, what would be its name and main attraction?
I love these questions.
Yeah.
From now on, ChatGPT will be the only person allowed to interview me.
Yeah, it's a funny question, but I specifically picked it up because it doesn't have any sense of doubt that if there is anyone to create a security-themed amusement park, it's going to be Bruce Schneier.
That's right. Well, do we call it the security theater? Or maybe
that's a good point.
It's already there.
Right. I think the security theater has to be there, right? And that has to be the main attraction, right? The security theater. Wow, and what would you call it?
Click here to kill everybody.
What do you want to call it?
Click here to kill everybody.
That's a good name, but I don't think it'll attract the clientele in the way we need them.
Yeah.
I think
approximately half of a % of population.
Right. I think we need a much more
welcoming name.
Hey, but wow. What is security thrills? That seems a little weird. Enigma is a good name. Actually, Blowfish is a good name for a theme park. Or even Two Fish.
Maybe you could expand and have a network and Blowfish, Two Fish, and Three Fish.
I'm liking Two Fish. right?
In LA, New York, and somewhere else.
Oh, you say you want a series of them? Okay.
No, because just like Blowfish, Two Fish, and Three Fish, right?
Yeah. Okay. So the Two Fish theme park featuring the Security Theater.
Nice.
Nice.
So
Okay, so number
Uh-huh.
five. We have number 5, and it's
Okay.
about naming again. But in this one, ChatGPT actually resolved this problem.
Okay.
We won't spend time trying to figure out what would be the best name for what it asks for, but still, it's a good name. So I just priming everyone
All right.
before I read it. So, as a security expert and author of several books, would you consider writing a children's book to teach the next generation about cybersecurity? Maybe titled "Good Night Firewall." What do you think about it? Because it almost made me cry when I read it.
It is bad.
It's so cute.
I have thought about it several times in my career, writing, either a children's book or a young adult book, like to teenagers, teaching them how to think like a hacker or to have a security mindset. And I have thought about it. I've never done it. I've considered it. I don't know if I'm the right person to do it. I don't know if I can speak to that audience well. But I think somewhere in this room, I have a children's illustrated book on security. I have one in open source. People are doing this. And I've thought about it. I've been asked several times by different people, and I've never done it. Feels like not my kind of thing, but maybe someday. I think it is important to do. I think there should be a children's book on security.
I believe there is already one on cryptography in particular, and then there are also a few books in National Cryptology Museum for general security.
Yeah,
well.
and those old books on cryptography that I read when I was a kid. There's the Zim book. I forget the name of it, like Cryptology and Secret Codes, maybe. There's a fiction book, Alvin's Secret Code, which I remember from the 60s very explicitly. There were books by Dover Publications that I remember. More really set to kids, but I read them. But today's kids' books are much more computery. I mean, those were all pencil paper books.
Yeah.
And the thing about computer books is they go obsolete quicker. And the advice I'd give you today might not be the advice I would give you 5 years ago. Might not be the advice I give you in 5 years. So it's a much shorter time frame. Yeah, but I do think about it. But
Nice.
Good Night Firewall is a different level of children's book that I have not thought about.
There you have it.
That was everything basically laid down before you. You just have to step on it.
So, but I think we could ask ChatGPT to write a children's book titled Good Night Firewall, and then go to Ali and have it illustrate the book.
Do you know that already happened?
I do not know they already haven't.
No, that already happened. So actually,
Vlad is going to show me the finished book right now that he just had the AIs right.
Because I see. Sorry,
let's try to do it until we
don't do it now. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, but we'll get back to you.
Yes.
10 seconds
with the first draft. It's not gonna be easy.
My former my former colleague, actually, that's what he did. He asked ChatGPT to write children's like a story for a child, and then he went to DALL-E and made some illustrations, and then he used some servers to actually publish the book and did it like in a weekend. So yeah, it had some success.
Doing it to write personal children's stories, right? So with your child's name and things in their life and stuff that happened today. I mean, that kind of interactive fiction, I think, is going to be very powerful.
It's a little bit different story, though, compared to like email templates that we discussed before, right? Yes. There, you kind of take the template and you use it. That seems fine. I'm not sure if it's fine to like completely take a story that was generated for you and present it as your own. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you'd want to say written with the help of.
Yeah, I think that's how it results. They should be like explicitly say that this was generated.
Yeah, I think so. That feels fair. I had a colleague who went to GPT, I don't know which model, and said, give me a 9-chapter outline on the sociology of cybersecurity. And it gave 1,000 words, bullet points of an outline for a book. And then he took the chapter 1 and said, write me a chapter description of this chapter for this audience, technical, audience. And it gave like 1,000 words, that for each chapter. And he had basically a 10,000 word book proposal. It can't write the book yet. It was just the proposal.
Yeah.
But it was, I saw it. It was really good. It was really good.
What about like the message, like of the story of this book, right? Because in AI debate, lots of critics for these LLMs is about like they can hallucinate, they don't have any kind of aim when they talking, right? They just like to be,
So I mean, I think you need to think of them now as an intern. That anything they write, you have to edit and fact check and just make sure it's good. Mm-hmm. It is producing a mediocre first draft. But a mediocre first draft is an amazing thing to have in your hands at no work. And, improving it and making it good is a different creative process. So that's my guess is the way this is going to work, that people are going to use it as a first draft.
Vlad, you had something? Because I have a question on a different topic.
Yeah, I wanted to share my experience because it's not a pleasant one, but still. So I was asked a couple of weeks before to write this like expert opinion about what a graduate student of a cybersecurity degree should look like. There is a concept of graduate's portrait or something, that the academia, the universities are asking the experts in the field, and we express our opinions, and then they take it into account. So I spent some time generating these bullets, and then I thought, what am I doing? I have to go to ChatGPT and ask it, and I did. I came to it, I asked it this question, and it generated the list that was pretty much the same, but guess which one was better? And we lost him.
That happens, as usually internet in the United States loses to the internet in Ukraine.
It did happen to me earlier today. Right?
Okay.
Let's see if he can rejoin the link, and if anything, we're almost at an hour, so that would be it. But these AI questions did have quite a bit of success. Oh, welcome back. Sorry, you're muted. There we go.
I warned you I was having computer problems.
Exactly. I was just telling Vlad that as usually, Ukrainian internet during the war tends to beat United States internet.
In peacetime. Yeah, right. Yeah, it was totally my fault. But I bet it's my computer, not the internet here. So
okay, got it.
We're finishing up anyway at this point.
Yep.
Sorry, Vlad, you wanna reiterate?
No, I just told the anecdote about me doing some work and then asking ChatGPT to do it, and then it turned out that their variant was a little bit better than mine.
Yeah, that's the thing. But the real value is you and the AI together. What we know at all AI research is that the best outcomes in the AI is a human assistive tool. It doesn't replace you, it assists you. And the best of both.
We briefly mentioned deepfakes, right? And as they get better, both voice and then video. And I think we might have talked about briefly about this last time 2 years ago, but I guess not much has changed in the industry. I wonder why the countermeasures aren't in progress if we have such a big concern, and these do get better every year, right? So you would think that this is solved because all you have to do is add cryptographic signatures in equipment that actually captures real videos and stuff.
Yeah, but that's harder than you think, and you can run a deepfake through an equipment that captures real video. I mean, so one, that's not as easy, and two, I'm not sure deepfakes are that big a problem yet, and that they will be. I mean, I think like lousy video is just as effective in most cases. But I'm not sure that a digital signature in the object is going to be the solution. I think it's too easy to hack. So I don't see that as like think of the verified camera. I wrote a paper on that in the 90s on a verified camera because we worried about not deep fakes, we worried about image manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, we've had Photoshop for what, 2 decades more, and we still don't have a camera that signs its images.
We have dash cams that kind of do signature, but that's used more for evidence.
Yeah,
right.
right. And they basically work even without it because the stuff's shipped live into the cloud. So I think what we learn is from cameras that that's not really a useful solution, which is interesting. It's something worth just figuring out why.
And I guess it would just easier be to convince, like no one would be checking the signature, even if the technological aspect of it is perfect. So yeah, that's a good point. So one thing that I wanted to cover briefly as well on the AI topic is you recently wrote essay How AI Could Rewrite Our Laws, where you basically outlined the impact that AI could have on the process of legislation and some countermeasures, and basically the few countermeasures you propose. Well, just to outline, or do you want to tell like what do you think are the main kind of threats that we have for legislation when it comes to AI, and we can use tools something like ChatGPT?
So these are not GPT things. These are just AI in general. It's a series of essays I'm writing on how it can affect democracy. And I looked at lobbying, how AI might affect lobbying. And in the paper essay you mentioned, it's in the MIT Tech Review, you can see on my website, I talk about micro legislation, the notion of a very small change in the law that will benefit somebody, you, me, and whether an AI can search law, look for potential changes, suggest them, and of course they have to go through the process to be passed. But you're looking for a change that benefits you, but is not obvious, that is subtle. And that really feels like the kind of optimization task that an AI is suitable for. So that's the issue we're talking about. You know, and the defenses are the kind of things we use now because that exists today. It's just a manual process. That's not a new thing I just described, micro legislation. It'll just be automated. So it'll happen faster.
And done much faster. Yeah, you wouldn't have to read through thousands of pages. Yeah.
Right. So now we just need lots of open government laws to make sure that stuff doesn't happen. But I'm trying to think about a few steps ahead of how these AI systems, not just large language models, that just produces text, but the pattern matching, the pattern recognition, the optimization, the hill climbing, how those will affect our institutions. And that's I've done 3 essays on that so far.
Right. And I think the primary countermeasures you propose are kind of reduce, size of these bills to make them simpler to analyze, right. Transparency in the bill process. So not just like result in text, but actually like the process and rationale.
Right. Who's talking to who, where are people getting their ideas? Where's the text coming from? Yes.
Yeah. And this all sounds a lot like some best practices in academia during like cryptography papers writing.
This is important. The stuff we propose in all of our essays is not new because the AIs aren't changing anything. They're just making it faster. Right? They're just making it more sophisticated. They're not doing anything new.
Yeah. And like, important. Provide rationale, no magic numbers, right? It also kind of sounds similar to, good code reviews. Right?
And exactly. Because legal code is just code. It's the same thing.
So we need to have more code reviewing practices.
All right, I'm going to be less subtle now. We have to end soon.
Yep, that's true. Vlad, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that we are over time and we must be mindful of your time. And thank you very much for sharing this hour.
I'm going to eat lunch now.
Sorry?
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know where you are on this planet, but I'm going to eat lunch now.
Yeah, of course.
Got it. Yeah.
Bon appetit.
Supper for Vlad. It's actually breakfast for us with Alex, because we're in California. Typically, the questions that we sum up with is what would be your advice or message to Ukrainian audience?
Wow, I don't know if I'm qualified to give advice or a message. Right? It's a big deal, and a lot of people rooting for you, and trying to help the way we can. It's going to be hard. We're going into an election year in the United States, and that's going to make this all harder. So just be aware of that, and keep going.
Thank you so much.
Keep your patches up to date.
And do your backups. When you mentioned about backups, I didn't want to. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt the flow back then, but backups is so important, because I have so many friends who were forced to leave their home and move from the war, and then they realize, that there are pictures on the laptop, there are videos, basically all their life is left somewhere, and they don't have it in the cloud, they don't have it with their relatives somewhere different place, and they basically lost just a lot of stuff. I mean, it's not comparable to losing your life, so it's fine. But just a simple practice would help keep them. Thank you so much, Mr. Schneier. It's been, as always, a pleasure to have you. I hope we will talk after the victory as well.
Thank you to all you three and ChatGPT for those excellent interview questions.
That was some fun indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we always encourage people to help with any means they can. We do encourage to donate to our trusted fund, Come Back Alive, that helps tremendously to Ukrainian army, because I believe nowadays, even though of course you need to help with humanitarian help, but I think the most effective help, if you want to have efficient one, right, it's to make the victory closer, and then you won't need to spend on humanitarian aid. So yeah, thank you so much, and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you all.